I'm Beth, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this cute little fox from Kid Giddy using the Sizzix Big Shot Plus. So when you start this project, all the pieces that you're going to need to make this fox are on this die here. You will need to use the longer cutting pads to make sure that you're covering the entire die when you're cutting it. What I've got here is just one of the parts covered, so I'm going to be cutting out the arms and the legs. What I've got here is 4 layers of fabric, and I've just concertinaed the fabric backwards and forwards and made sure that it's covering the entire piece that I want to cut out. When it's layered up like that, I'm going to layer up my die, putting a pad either side, top and bottom, popping it into the machine, and then rolling it through. Now the really good thing is that if you have the Big Shot Plus, if you're using a length of fabric and you're trying to get the most frugal use, if you have any spare fabric, you've got length in the neck of the machine for that fabric to be folded up, so you don't have to cut everything to size before you put it through the machine. Rolling that through, just supporting it as it comes off the end. And there we have 4 arms and 4 legs. My suggestion would be cut out all the pieces that you're going to need for the project, pop them to one side, and then you can get started. So to create the contrast tip on the tail, what I've done here is I've got a 2-inch square and just attached that to a strip of my main colorway. I would then lay 2 of that on top, so 2 layers joined, and roll that through the machine. What I'm then going to end up with is 2 of these where I've got the strip of fabric and the contrast tip. Lay the right sides together, and with a very scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, stitch all the way around, leaving the one end open. Then turn the whole tail inside out, use a chopstick if you like, just to make sure you push out through the end, and there you go. You'll end up with a finished tail piece like that one there. So to make the arms, we're going to take one of the arm pieces and the pads of the paw that we've cut out as well. You can either hand or machine stitch those in place, leaving a bit of a gap as you're going to need that for the seam allowance. Once you've stitched the paw in place, you're then going to attach one arm with the paw to a plain arm piece as well, right sides together using your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now what really helps when you're piecing together pieces like this with curves, is you're just going to make notches in the curve around the outer edge. And that means that when you do come to turning it back out the other way, it's going to be a lot easier to turn and to get a smooth edge. So you can see I'm just taking out some little notches of fabric there. They don't have to be particularly big. Do make sure you don't clip through the stitching. And I would do that the entire way around that curved edge. So once that's done, turn it out the right way, using that chopstick to help you push through right the way to the end. And you can see you've got the paw pad right up at the edge of the stitching there. Once you've done that, you're going to repeat the process and stuff them to make a left and a right on the arms. And you're going to use exactly the same process to do the legs as well. That chopstick's going to come really in handy to make sure you get the stuffing all the way down to the bottom of the feet. So to make the face, we're going to take the main central piece on the head and we're going to stitch on a curve one of the side pieces. Make sure you stick to your 1/4 inch seam allowance at that point. It's going to be really important to keep the right shape on the face. Then repeat with the other side, so you have both side pieces and the central one in place. And then stitching the 2 side pieces together along the bottom, that's going to create the bottom of the neck for the fox. The next stage is going to be just to do a small line of stitching across the top of the nose, and that's going to give you the pointy snout that you're going to need. So that's the one I've got there for you. What you're then going to need to do to finish off that face is create the ears. So for the ear, you have the 2 curved triangular pieces with the main colour and the contrast colour. Stitch those with a 1/4 inch of your seam allowance and notch those edges again, and you're going to be turning those out the right way as well. Once you've done that, the ears are ready to stitch onto the edge of your face, and here you can see I've got one that's out the right way. You can see I've got a good little snout on that nose. The ears are in place, and that's going to be ready to attach to the back of the head to create the whole of the headpiece of the fox. So once you've got the completed front of your head, you're then going to piece the two back parts of the head, and you can see we've stitched those right sides together and notched the edge again. And then to make the head complete, you're going to put right sides together on that. You're going to take a couple of pins and you're going to pin the whole way around, making sure that the ears are obviously tucked inside the head, otherwise you're going to end up with an ear stuck somewhere. You're going to work all the way around pinning that. Make sure that you've spread the fabric evenly so that the edges of the neck match up on both sides. Once that's all pinned, you can then stitch around there either by hand or machine, whichever you prefer. Once you've turned that inside out, you're then going to have this headpiece here. The ears are going to be the right side out now. You've got your nose in place as well. Before we go any further with the body, you're going to attach the completed arms to the head. So the way you're going to do that is you're going to think that the fox is in shock at how gorgeous he's going to be. And then we're going to just pin the arms, creating that shocked look so that the paws are on the side facing up. You can pop a couple of pins in place, depending on how confident you are with that. I would just then tack those pieces, those arms into place, and then once the arms are attached and once the body is attached to the head, those arms will then flop down and give you the arms in the correct positioning. So moving on to the body, we're going to cut 4 pieces of the body to make the 3D effect. One thing to note is that on the side of the cut piece, there's a notch and it's only on one side. And the reason for that is so that you can join the unnotched seams to create the center around that little cute pot belly he has. And the notched edges meet at the sides. And that means you're not going to end up with a wonky fox. Nobody wants a wonky fox. What you're then going to do is stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance to join the 2 front pieces together. Pop that to one side for a moment. Then you're going to get your tail piece that you've already made, and you're going to place that on one of the back pieces, making sure it's lined up on the center seam at the back, otherwise you'll have the tail coming out at the side. Once you've done that, you can repeat the same process you did for the front on this back. This time, you're going to stitch a couple of inches at the top and a couple of inches at the bottom, making sure you go over that seam where the tail is, but you're going to leave the back open. The reason for that, you'll be able to use that aperture to stuff the fox, and then you'll be able to stitch that up afterwards. Once you have the front and the back complete, you're going to join the two together. And with a similar effect as you've done on this back piece, you're going to match the sides together at the top, front and back, and stitch about halfway down on the 2 side seams. That's going to give you a piece that looks like this. If I hold that up, you can see a 3D effect of that. I've got the tail, it's going to be tucked up inside for the moment, but I've got the stitching complete along all of the front of the fox, halfway down the 2 sides, and then I've got that top and bottom stitching on the back piece there. We're going to leave the bottom open as that's going to help us put our legs in just a moment. So to join the head to the body, we've got a little headpiece here and our tail. We're going to make sure that the nose is facing the opposite direction to that tail and pop that up inside there. And again, that's right sides together. And then what you do then is line up the side seams on the neck. Take your time getting it into place. It's much more important that it's in the right place than you get it done quickly. You're going to be looking at it for a lot longer than you're going to be making it. And then pin and stitch that in place. You're going to want to use a tight running stitch all the way around the neck there to hold that in place. And then we're going to move on to attaching the legs. So before we attach the legs, we need to make a little bit of space inside the body cavity for them. So we're just going to push the head and the arms that we've attached a little way up through the neck. Don't have to go all the way up, just a bit out of the way. Then to attach the leg, we need to make sure we get the orientation of that leg right. I want my paw facing backwards as it would be if the fox was stood up. So I'm going to orient it as such, and then we're going to be attaching it so that, again, right sides are together, and once it's in place, it's going to tuck up inside the body. I'll pin that in place and repeat on the other side with the leg, making sure that the toes are pointing in towards the tail in the center of the back, and that both of my feet are facing the correct direction. Once I've got that done, those are all going to be tucked up inside, and I'm going to move on to this shape here. I've got my legs tucked up in the body cavity. I'm going to pin along that edge there. That's the bottom of the fox. And then stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way along the bottom. The legs are inside there, the arms are inside there, but as you can see, if I turn them over, that aperture that we left in the back of the fox is now there ready for me to pull all of those elements through, turn the fox inside out, and begin to stuff it. So I'm then going to pull the arms and legs through that gap. And those are already stuffed. Turn the head back out through that space. Get his arms out as well. There we go. And then just push that head through. Use those ears to help you pull it through. And pull out the nose. You can see he's starting to take quite a good shape already. Then going to get my stuffing. Tease off a small amount. And I'm going to start by stuffing the head, specifically the nose. The reason being that if I don't stuff that first, it's going to be very hard to come back to. So just pushing in little by little. It's always worth doing slightly smaller amounts at a time when you are stuffing. That means you can get a good smooth finish. If you try and get a whole ball in there at once, it's a lot harder to manipulate and fill the spaces once your hands are already inside the fox. So I'm going to keep on doing that. So when I've nearly finished the stuffing, I'm just going to push the final few bits in, making sure I haven't filled it so tight that I can't then close it. Then I'm going to stitch up those two sides together using a ladder stitch to hold that in place. And here we have the finished fox. As you can see, we've added some embellishment, just putting a couple of stitches in place to give the eyes. We've also got a hat that's made from 2 pieces that are also found on the die. You can give him a little party hat. You can stitch that on, or you could put a bit of elastic on or anything like that to keep it in place if you wanted to. You also have a balloon shape on the die, and all we've done here is cut out 2 of each colourway, stitch them back to back, put in a little bit of wire, twisted that wire down, and then the fox has something to hold there. Obviously, do be careful if you're wanting to give this as a gift to a child, make sure things like the wire aren't in there. You could also add your own buttons, your own bows. If you want to turn this into a little girl fox, you could pop a little ribbon on there. You could do so many different things with him. For more ideas and inspiration, do head on over to the blog and to the website. Thanks for watching. Enjoy making.